unfortunately, there's really not. And that's the problem. There are literally thousands of children that have crossed the tipping point where we won't know the total mortality and morbidity numbers for months. But, even with refeeding in an ICU environment where you can monitor blood electrolyte levels several times a day under extremely controlled conditions, there's still very high lethality. And so, the issue is too, is that the underestimation, and a really terrible part of this story is that, the numbers that we have are from people who are still able to get up and walk and move around. There are so many people that are so destroyed that they're just lying in their tents.
Yes.
So, they're completely isolated and we have no idea about them. And so these numbers are just going to climb so high.
A really brief thought, if you would, as a final thought, because I know you as doctors try to get baby formula into Gaza. Just briefly, tell me what happened there.
Well, when we were at Nasser, we occasionally would need to go over to the children's hospital adjacent to Nasser. And while we were there, it was overwhelming. There were 100 children that were at high risk of imminent death from starvation that needed specialized formula. And they are living day to day, hour by hour, waiting for small amounts of food to come in. People that basically smuggle specialized formula in because the Israeli Defense Force has, explicitly and intentionally blocked baby formula. The crew that came in right behind us, we asked them to bring in formula. The IDF stopped them at the border and took all of the formula out of their bags. But there are thousands of children in very close proximity to the hospital because the hospital itself is overwhelmed, and these children are at risk of death. And the families just essentially hunker down in buildings, blown up buildings around the hospital, to come in under emergent conditions because there's no room in the hospital. And this is a red zone, so they're living in a red zone in close proximity to the hospital, so they can jump in quickly at the last second. But generally, there's nothing that can be done.
Doctor, we have to leave it there, but we are very grateful for your time, for speaking to us here on BBC News. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we'll have more on all of our headline stories here in a moment. We're going to take a short break around the world and across the UK. You're watching BBC News. Welcome back to Verified Live. Now, Donald Trump's deadline for Russia to agree to a ceasefire in Ukraine or face more sweeping sanctions is due to expire today. The Kremlin said yesterday that Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin would hold a summit in the coming days. Well, let's speak live on the programme to the former Ukrainian President, Petro Poroshenko. And Mr. President, thank you very much for being here on the programme. How much hope do you hold out for any summit between Putin and Trump?
Well, thank you very much for your invitation. And today is absolutely crucial day. And I can tell you that when the times is expired, we should act efficiently. And Ukraine maybe pay the highest price for every single day for postponing the ceasefire. Ukraine is a nation who wants the most peace, but Trump promised that if Putin do not accept the condition which United States, together with Ukraine, together with European Union, together with Great Britain, introduced to Putin, it should be Plan B. Plan B means more weapons to Ukrainian armed forces, because only Ukrainian armed forces is the best diplomat who stop Putin.
Can I just interrupt you before you go on? Because do I understand you correctly that at the end of today, unless Vladimir Putin has agreed to a ceasefire, you think that the US president should impose those sanctions now, in terms of all that list that you were just describing?
Three things: weapons. Second, sanction from the hell. Third, new financial support of Ukraine. And two more: promising, demonstrating that the transatlantic integration of Ukraine in NATO is the fact that Putin cannot blackmail the whole free world. And with this effective sanction, we can stop Putin's ability to finance the war with the most modern weapons, including those who are behind my back. And this is the most modern radio electronic warfare system, which tomorrow would be on the front line. And today I'm standing here despite of the air alert because of the Russian ballistic missiles. We are here fight to stop Putin. My message is the following: please do not trust Putin.
Okay, let me put aside sanctions, because you've made that point at length. Tell me, in terms of a summit between these two leaders, what would be unacceptable to Ukraine? Because as we are speaking now, Bloomberg News is reporting the US and Russian officials are working towards an agreement on territories for a planned summit as early as next week, and talking about cementing Putin's gains in Ukraine, the gains he's already made. Is that acceptable or unacceptable in your view?
First of all, we are a nation who do not regain our territory. But I want to deliver you the information that Putin don't need Ukrainian territory. Putin don't need part of Ukraine. Putin won't have a geostrategic success by placing here in Kiev pro-Kremlin government. That is his point. And with this situation, we should understand absolutely clear that we cannot accept, cannot demonstrate that the peace should be settled on the expense of Ukraine. No, we think that that would be absolutely dangerous precedent. In my time, in the time of my term as a president, I also prepared the Minsk Agreement. But I want to remind you that the Minsk Agreement, which we discussed and signed together with Putin, it was no pretense of Putin to Ukrainian territory, to Ukrainian sovereignty, to Ukrainian independence. And another principle, which is vitally important during this meeting, is nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine, nothing about Europe without Europe. And with this situation, I'm absolutely confident that even fact of meeting between Putin and Trump, if it is not bring any results, this is the absolutely great success for Putin. Because Putin break the international isolation which he appeared. And that's why we need to have this meeting with the absolutely practical results of this deal. And I think that these results can be unconditional, overwhelming, not only in the air, in the Navy, ceasefire.
Petro Poroshenko, we have to leave there. We are out of time, but thank you so much for your time here speaking to the BBC.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
We're going to take a short break. When we're back, we're going to spend the next half an hour taking all of your questions about the latest move from Israel and Israel's Security Cabinet taking full control of Gaza City. We don't know when and where that will actually start, but we've been sending in a lot of your questions, so we'll go through all of those with a team of BBC correspondents here on the programme for the next 30 minutes. Don't go away. Welcome to Your Voice, Your BBC News. Israel's Security Cabinet has approved a plan for the military to take over Gaza City, marking a significant escalation of the war with Hamas. Well, we've been asking you for your questions. You sent so many in, and with me to answer them is our Middle East correspondent, Amir Nader, our Gaza correspondent, Rushdie Abu-Alouf, our political correspondent, David Cornock, and our correspondent here with me, Joe Inwood. So, let's get going. Amir, to you, first of all, remind people what is in this plan and when it will be implemented.
Well, it's essentially a plan for the army, for the Israeli Defense Forces to push into Gaza City, a city where there are still around 1 million Palestinians living there. Many have been pushed there throughout the course of the war, many who were there previously. And the plan is to conquer the city over a period of 2 months, to force those roughly 1 million people south towards southern areas of the Gaza Strip. Then the city will be essentially laid siege to, and the military will fight what remains of Hamas fighters there. It's been seen as a plan to essentially occupy the Gaza City, but announced as part of a set of principles announced by Prime Minister Netanyahu, which involves the disarmament of Hamas, the release of hostages, and indeed turning over the entirety of the Gaza Strip to Arab governments. But the detail on that sort of wider plan is very light. We didn't hear that in the announcement. All we've heard is that there is this plan now that's been approved to go into Gaza City, take over it, and essentially force half of Gaza's population south.
Rushdie, let me bring you into the conversation. Tell me a little of what people have been saying to you since the details of this was announced.
Well, people were up all night waiting for this decision, and in the morning we have seen the social media flooded with very angry posts by Palestinians everywhere, but especially those who have access to the internet in Gaza. Most of the focus of this anger was towards Hamas. They accused Hamas of not doing enough to stop Israel from going in this plan. What they need is that they need a solution from Hamas, not only a long statement talking about the previous ceasefire talks. From Hamas' point of view, there is no sign of laying down their weapon or handling the Israeli hostages for free. They keep repeating that they need an end to the war, a guarantee by the Americans Israel will not go back to the war if they agree to the ceasefire. People in Gaza, what they fear the most is the displacement, not only the occupation. And they don't know what to do or where to go. You know, a million people in a tiny bit of land east of Gaza, west of Gaza, and they don't know what to do. Most of them said that we are not going to repeat the same mistake and leave our homes again.
I'll come back to that thought in a moment, but let me bring Joe into the conversation. And Joe, just a quick assessment, first of all, how much of an escalation is this?
I think it will be a significant escalation. I mean, as Amir said at the start, we don't really know all the details at this point. There's quite a lot which has been left unsaid, but the idea that they're going to be pushing into some of the areas which have so far been certainly not untouched by the war, but have been less the focus of the military operation is a real cause for concern. I think the point that hasn't been made yet that is worth bringing in here is the extent to which this announcement shows how almost immune to or unfussed by international criticism the Israeli government seems to be. Over the last few weeks, we've seen really, really significant increases of the criticisms of them by traditional allies. We've heard the push from France that they're going to recognise a Palestinian state, the suggestion that the UK will do the same if the war isn't stopped, if a ceasefire isn't agreed. The idea that at this point, even in the face of all this criticism, they've made the decision to escalate the war, I think does say something about the extent to which they feel slightly kind of insulated from that international criticism.
Well, Joe, you bring me to a question from Jack here in London, who says, is this not different from the originally stated intentions of Israel's action following October the 7th?
Yeah, so I've got the stated ones here. So at the start of the war, they said they wanted to destroy Hamas, to free the hostages, to ensure Gaza no longer poses a threat to Israel, and to return displaced residents of northern Israel. Today we've got a five-point plan, or 5 aims that they've put out. the disarmament of Hamas, the return of the hostages, both living and dead, the demilitarization of the Gaza Strip, Israel's security control over the Gaza Strip, and the establishment of an alternative civilian administration that is neither Hamas nor the Palestinian Authority. And in a way, it's that final one I think is interesting, because for the first time, they are talking about what happens the day after the war, but they seem to be speaking about it in a way that is completely disconnected from the other plans that, for example, the Arab nations have put forward. So it's a slight deviation, but the broad themes are quite similar.
Let me bring David in from Westminster, because what Joe said sets you up nicely to this next question from Sarah, who says, Prime Minister Starmer is saying it is wrong for Israel's escalation plan to take over Gaza, but what actionable plan does the Prime Minister have in place in opposing Israel here?
That's a very good question. Early today, we got a statement from Downing Street indicating that alarm at the Israeli government's decision. Certainly, Keir Starmer said that he is urging Israel to reconsider that decision immediately. The action will do nothing to end the conflict or secure the release of the hostages and will only lead to more bloodshed. Now, as for a plan, well, as Joe indicated there, Israel does seem unfussed by criticism from its allies, but Keir Starmer believes the solution lies in international diplomacy. He's saying that together with our allies, we're working on a long-term plan to secure peace in the region as part of a two-state solution. Of course, that's slightly easier said than done, because he says that without both sides engaging in good faith in negotiations, that prospect's vanishing before our eyes. In terms of practical steps, well, we do know that unless Israel changes its conduct, the UK has said that next month at the United Nations it will follow France in recognising a Palestinian state.
Yes.
And he hopes that will put international pressure on Israel.
I'll come back to that point later, because I know there's a question about it. But Rushdie, you touched on it a little earlier, and I've got a question here that says, where can or will Gazans go if the whole area is to be occupied? Because we're talking, at least around Gaza City, of 1 million people or so, aren't we?
Yes, I mean, the original number of people in Gaza was almost like 500,000. But, you know, since the Israeli started military operation in the north, east and south, all of the people are squeezed into the west, about 1 million people in a very tiny bit of land. And it depends where the Israelis are going to start this operation. If they are going to start from Gaza City, that most likely what they are going to do is as they did back in October 2023, when they forced all of the people to go south to Khan Yunis and Deir el-Balah in the south. This is what the people are feeling and all the time talking about. Since early in the morning, they are discussing this. I mean, this question has to be answered by the Israelis. The people in Gaza say, where shall we go? We have been the entire population displaced more than once in the last 22 months from all around Gaza Strip. So what if and what's the point of pushing the people out of Gaza if they are going to reoccupy the entire Gaza Strip? So things are not clear, and there is a sense of fear and uncertainty about their future.
Amir, let me bring you back in, and as I do, let me read you a quote from the former US ambassador to Israel, Dan Shapiro, who posted this on social media earlier. He said this plan would be a disaster: dead hostages, dead Palestinians, civilians, dead IDF soldiers, long-term occupation and insurgency, and deeper isolation of Israel. No Arab help in Gaza, no Saudi normalization or expansion of the Abraham Accords. In terms of what the families of the hostages are saying, certainly the beginning of that statement echoes the alarm that you're seeing there, doesn't it?
That's right. I mean, the hostage families have been out on the street protesting last night in the hundreds. They've been protesting daily, almost weekly. I think this announcement adds much more concern on their part. They've called it a death sentence, essentially, for their family, their relatives who remain captive in the Gaza Strip. There are roughly around 20 Israeli hostages still believed to be kept there. many of whom, I mean, it's reported that the Israeli military believes some of them are being kept in Gaza City, and that could be one of the reasons why the Israeli military hasn't pursued a ground operation into that part of Gaza so far. We have seen some reporting in Israeli media that as part of the negotiations between the government and the military leadership, there are parts of Gaza City which it's been agreed that the military would proceed with extreme caution, that the Israeli military is extremely cautious about the fate of the Israeli hostages. The issue is that we've seen throughout the war statements by Hamas and reporting that should the Israeli military approach locations where hostages are being kept, that their captors have been given orders to shoot the hostages dead. So their stakes are extremely high, and it goes some way to explaining the real fear of the families of the hostages.
Yes. Joe, let me bring you in, because this plan from Netanyahu is to put even more pressure on Hamas. A question about that then. Do we have any sort of idea about how many Hamas fighters are left in Gaza?
Yeah, so let's start with some of the numbers, and the caveat with all of this is these are estimates often, but the US National Intelligence Directorate say that there were about 20,000 to 30,000 Hamas fighters before October the 7th. Israel say that's now down to 16 to 18,000. So there's clearly been a major degradation of their numbers. It is worth pointing out that Antony Blinken, the former Secretary of State, said that he reckons as many fighters have been killed have been recruited, because this war, people say, has been an effective recruiting sergeant for Hamas because of the anger. And it's also worth pointing out that Hamas is as an ideology as much as a fighting force. And although their top ranks have been utterly devastated, top 3 levels across their command have been killed, it's said, you can't kill an ideology in the way that Israel has been trying. That's certainly what the Israeli military leadership have been saying, that actually what they need to do is present an alternative vision, and that's something which has so far been lacking.
And it's whether you get an insurgency in the months that follow, like Afghanistan, indeed, like Iraq. A follow-up question that's come from W. Thompson, who says, why are there no sanctions being imposed against Israel? They've killed more civilians in recent years than Russia.
Yeah, there's a few points in that. I mean, firstly, some countries have, countries like South Africa, but they're smaller nations. Also, some of Israel's allies have put sanctions on specific people, specifically on the settler movement, what they call the Hilltop Youth. So there have been sanctions there. But I think the feeling is that at the moment, that is a step that, in terms of putting sanctions, for example, on Benjamin Netanyahu, that is a step although people have called for that they would not be willing to take, traditional allies, at this point. I think on the comparison, it is one point that is worth making on the comparison with Russia. And although there are clearly people who say that what Israel has done is just as bad, that would be some people's view, it is worth pointing out that Israel was responding to a direct attack on its territory before it carried out its attacks in Gaza, whereas Russia, of course, was invading a sovereign neighbour. So the comparison there does need to be used with care.
David, let me bring you in, because we were touching upon sanctions, and a question here from Gregory Steele, who says, I applaud the German decision to stop supplying military ordnance that might be used in Gaza. I'd like to know if our government here in the UK will likewise decide to stop similar supplies.
It's another good question. Now, what the UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy has said is that the UK has suspended arms sales that could be used in Gaza, but clearly it's slightly more complicated than that. When Labour came to power here a year ago, it did suspend 30 out of 350 arms export licenses. They affected parts such as parts for fighter jets, helicopters and drones. But what the government's critics come back to is F-35 jets being used by Israel, for which something like 15% of the parts can be made here in the UK. Now, the UK has not included those in the suspension of the export licenses, and this is the argument that it couldn't prevent Israel from obtaining these components as they're sent to manufacturing centres abroad as part of a global programme and not directly from the UK to Israel. So David Lammy saying that, yes, arms sales that could be used in Gaza have been suspended, but he is also saying that the UK could do more in the coming weeks if the Israeli government doesn't change its conduct.
Let me bring Rushdie back in and ask you about the humanitarian situation on the ground. Where is that in all of this plan? And a question from S. Francis, who asks, why can't the UN troops just go into Gaza, take in the food and the trucks and prevent them from being looted?
Well, about the UN, it's involved like a legal issue about it, because it needs a resolution from the UN Security Council, which is, I think the US will possibly or most likely will veto this, because they don't want to limit Israel's ability to work freely in Gaza. About the aid, yes, there are more aid are allowed into Gaza, and for the first time, the local companies, the traders in Gaza are allowed to import from Israel. We have seen new items brought into Gaza for the first time since like March, like sugar, fresh fruit and some more medicine into Gaza. Well, it's not near enough, because what Gaza need is 500 to 600 trucks every day for a month at least to overcome this hunger crisis. And what is being allowed is about 80 to 100 trucks every day. So there is still shortage of food in the market. The prices are still high, and more people are dying of hunger in the hospitals, according to Hamas-run health ministry.
Joe, let me bring you in, because I just want to ask you a question about the language that's being used, certainly yesterday in the statement from Benjamin Netanyahu, because they talk about control and not occupation. And that is significant, isn't it, in terms of some of the legal obligations it would put on Israel potentially here?
It would. I mean, I think this would be how potentially it could be interpreted. I don't think international opponents or even some allies of Israel wouldn't look at it this way. But if you're an occupying power, then of course you have a legal obligation. And this is one of the things that's been said often and repeatedly, is that's why Israel bears responsibility for the starvation in the Gaza Strip, because they're an occupying power, and that comes with legal responsibilities. I think if they were to, and if this is the suggestion that they say we're controlling, therefore they are absolved of legal responsibility, I think that would potentially be, well, I think it would go down very badly or not be accepted by many of Israel's critics and even allies abroad.
Which I suppose brings me to Trevor Clark's question, who says, does this decision by the Israeli government add further weight to the ICC case currently against Israel? So
we should say that, just to remind people, the ICC case was against 3 Hamas leaders and Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant, the former defence minister. This was brought, I believe, in the middle of 2024, essentially accusing them of complicity in war crimes. I mean, I think that the case that was already being made, they felt there was enough, Karim Khan, the prosecutor, felt there was enough evidence back then. So I don't think it's a question of evidence. The real question is, would the arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu ever be carried out? That is an open-ended question. It's one governments have avoided so far. It is worth pointing out that all the 3 Hamas leaders who were accused by the court have all been killed.
Amir, let me bring you in, and a twin brief thought, if I could, because a couple of questions here asking about when is the next Israeli election. We've also had a couple of former prime ministers talking about a campaign of civil disobedience. Are we likely to see that?
Well, the next election isn't due to take place till autumn next year, unless there's a dissolving of the parliament, which doesn't look likely. We've seen sort of mixed polling, I think, around the sentiments of Israelis. We're seeing that a majority do back a ceasefire deal. They do want the war to end. They do want the hostages to be returned, a deal to be struck with Hamas. However, we also see polling which does seem to somehow back the direction of Israel's military campaign in Gaza. We've seen around 80% of Israelis saying that they aren't troubled by the hunger situation in Gaza or the reports of starvation in Gaza. The protests by hostage families are quite interesting, because more and more we're seeing them talking about starvation in Gaza. It's drawing in a wider group of people who are troubled by that situation in the Gaza Strip. However, what we are seeing more and more is also the fact that whilst those hostage protests are taking place, it doesn't really seem to be translating into a wider mass movement that's drawing in the sort of mass Israeli popular opinion in the general public. So despite the anger of the political and military class that you referred to, that doesn't seem to be translating into a mass movement on the streets.
Rushdie, let me ask you a simple question, because people are asking, what did Gaza look like before this war compared to what it looks like now? And how scared are people now, given what we've heard overnight?
Well, there is nowhere to compare Gaza now with Gaza in the past. I mean, it was not a heaven, but it was good enough place for 2.3 million people to live in it. Gaza enjoy like 43-kilometer long beach. Most of it is accessible for swimming. Gaza used to have 5 or 6 5-star hotels and other nice restaurants and parks and horse clubs and gyms and everything. It was just ordinary place. Yes, 60% of the people were under the line of poverty, and about maybe 70% of the people used to rely on the UN for monthly food parcels and cash money. But used to live in Gaza, about 70,000 people used to be employed either by Hamas or by the Palestinian Authority, PA. About 5 to 10% were private sector and people who receive salaries from public sectors and UN agencies and other like journalists and whatever. So Gaza was experiencing a lot of problems, like there was no electricity, only 8 hours a day. 95% of the water were contaminated. Most of the sewage used to be pumped to the sea, and that was a real problem for the people of Gaza. But comparing to what the people are living now is completely different. Now, all of this is not there, does not exist. None of the hotels, none of the beachside, cafes exist. Most of the buildings are destroyed, and most important, the hospitals, the infrastructure, the schools, everything is destroyed now in Gaza. Well, Gaza was not a heaven, and today is like a hell.
Yes. We are in the last 4 or 5 minutes of the programme, so I still have 4 or 5 questions, so brief answers in the minutes ahead. David, to you, is there any chance the government could remove its conditions for recognising Palestine as a state? Now Israel is showing no indication of ending the offensive in Gaza, and that's from Dennis.
I think it's an understandable question, but the answer is almost certainly no. If you think that those conditions that Keir Starmer laid down, a ceasefire and allowing aid to go back in, they were understandable conditions, but he managed to alienate people on both sides of the argument. Those who thought that the Palestinian state should be recognised irrespective of Israel's actions, and those who thought that he didn't go far enough in laying down conditions for Hamas to return the hostages. So it looks unlikely. And Keir Starmer made that statement, laid down those conditions, but he seems to have satisfied some people, but also alienated some, even within his own party.
Really quick follow-up, David. The government has sanctioned Smotrich and Ben-Gvir. Why hasn't the government sanctioned Benjamin Netanyahu? He is the person making all of these decisions.
I think the answer to that goes into the reasons, lies in the reasons for sanctioning the other 2 ministers. And as David Lammy put it at the time, they were accused of inciting extremist violence and serious abuses of Palestinian human rights. So that went beyond the pale, as it were. And also for the UK to sanction the head of a democratic government, ostensibly a UK ally, that would be a step way beyond any other diplomatic action that's been taken so far.
Rushdie, let me go back to the 5-point plan we heard about yesterday. Benjamin Netanyahu saying that long-term Gaza can't be controlled by Hamas, can't be controlled by the Palestinian Authority. So who does he think will actually run it long-term?
Well, they are talking about technocrat committee formed by independent Palestinian, not belong to any political, background. Egyptian and the Qataris were working for a very long time on this, but the Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas rejected this idea because they said we have an existing government that is legally formed in the West Bank, and I am elected president. Why we have to go for this committee for the people of Gaza? They don't care whoever is running Gaza. They want the war to end. Every time they post in social media saying that we don't want Fatah, we don't want Hamas, we don't want Israel. We need the war to end and we need to go back to our life.
Joe, let me ask you a question that's come from Jack here in London, who says, will a full takeover and occupation in Gaza will now become Israel's Iraq?
That certainly seems to be the fear from IDF chiefs, IDF military top brass, who've said that there risks being a quagmire which not only would do terrible damage to the civilians of Gaza, but also they'd end up fighting an insurgency. They already are fighting an insurgency, but they get bogged down in the alleys and the streets of Gaza City. But I think there's another way to interpret this. It's not just about being involved in a quagmire, it's also about the international damage to the reputation of the country that was done, has been done to Israel already, and was done to the US and Iraq. There's a comparison there. Both countries started the war for this kind of comparable declared reasons, and they both suffered huge international damage to their reputations as a consequence of the way they've carried out that war.
Joe, thanks very much. Well, time is up. That's it from Your Voice, Your BBC News. My thanks to Emir Nader, to Rushdie Abu-Alouf, David Cornock there at Westminster, and Joe Inwood here in the studio here with me. And thanks for all of the questions that you sent in. Apologies if we didn't get to your questions, but do head to the BBC website. That is continually being updated on this very, very fluid major story. But that's it from me. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. Says the Israeli plan will lead to more bloodshed.
I am concerned about what is developing in Gaza at this time.
Our other head, thousands of Palestinians still live. Emir Nader reports now from Jerusalem.
What's left of Gaza City? Half of Gaza's Palestinians live here, many displaced from elsewhere.
Assure our security, remove Hamas there, enable the population to be free of Gaza, and to pass it to civilian governance. That is not Hamas and not anyone advocating.
Families are calling it a death sentence for the 50 Israelis who remain in captivity in Gaza, 20 of whom are believed to still be alive.
You failed. My Matan is that will bring all 50 of them home together.
The concerns of the hostage families are shared by Israel's military leadership in a dispute that erupted into public. The army's chief of staff reportedly telling the UK's Prime Minister Keir Starmer calling the decision wrong, that it will only bring more bloodshed. Now, after 22 months of war, Gaza's civilians once again face a new wave of displacement and death, and the vanishing prospect of a ceasefire deal that could ease their suffering.
Netanyahu's decision to occupy Gaza, there's nothing left to occupy. We're already dying, 100,000 deaths every day. Practically all of Gaza has been squeezed into the western part of Gaza City. At this point, for the people, there's no difference anymore, whether he occupies it or not.
Israel has today once again widened the horizons of its war in Gaza, with a move that could have untold ramifications for Palestinians and hostages. Emir Nada, BBC News, Jerusalem.
Well, within the last few hours, we've had reaction to the plan from the Foreign Secretary here, David Lammy. He is meeting with the US Vice President J.D. Vance. Have a listen.
I am concerned about what is developing in Gaza at this time and the recent decision by the cabinet, and hugely concerned, as I think a lot of Israeli people are, about the impact, particularly on the hostages, and we'll be able to discuss these issues in the hours ahead.
Well, reporters also asked the US Vice President J.D. Vance about whether the US would recognise a Palestinian state.
Well, it's one of the things that we're going to talk about. Obviously, the United Kingdom is going to make its decision. We have no plans to recognize a Palestinian state. I don't know what it would mean to really recognize a Palestinian state, given the lack of a functional government there. You know, what the president has made very clear is our two goals are very simple right now vis-a-vis the situation in Israel and Gaza. Number one, we want to make it so that Hamas cannot attack innocent Israeli civilians ever again, and we think that has to come through the eradication of Hamas. Second, the president has been very moved by these terrible images of the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, so we want to make sure that we solve that problem. I think all of us can work on how to solve that problem. Obviously, it's not an easy problem to solve, or it would have already been dealt with, but we share, I think, that focus and that goal. We may have some disagreements about how exactly to accomplish that goal, and we'll talk about that today.
Let us cross live to New York, because I think the Palestinian representative has just started speaking. Actually, he is outside of the UN, outside of the main chamber. But let's cross over and hear a little of Riyad Mansour.
President Abbas the presidency made a statement yesterday, and the president is contacting all leaders in all corners of the globe for everyone to act responsibly, to avoid additional catastrophes against our people in the Gaza Strip. We had more than 60,000 that have been killed. Most of them are children and women. We have more than 200,000 killed, injured, or under the rubble. Enough is enough. We don't need more wars, more killing, more agonies, more occupation, more genocide. What we need is to stop this machine of war and to open doors for peace. So we had this consultation with the President of the Security Council. In few moments, we will deliver to him a letter from the mission of the State of Palestine to the UN, reflecting the instructions from President Abbas for the Security Council to shoulder its responsibilities and to act immediately. In addition to that, of course, the President asked for immediate meetings for the Council of Arab Representatives of the League of Arab States in Cairo, and the OIC also leadership in Jeddah. In our side here, we requested immediate meetings for the Arab group, which will take place at 3 o'clock in Conference Room 5 today, this afternoon, and the OIC also Council of Ambassadors, so that we can mobilize and act collectively. I know as we speak, there will be a number of countries on our behalf and on their own behalf will be requesting a meeting of the Security Council. It will be maybe in few minutes in which, you know, a number of countries collectively will be asking for that meeting. We prefer to meet as quickly as possible, immediately. But of course, the timing of the meeting will be a result of consultation. There are a number of countries that are saying that they want the meeting to take place this afternoon. We are aware of the arrival of the President of the Security Council, President of Panama, who will be arriving to New York this afternoon, and certain concerns by the President. And we are aware of others who are saying that we need to act as quickly as possible in order to stop Israel from unleashing this massive military operation. So then we are considering all options, including the possibility of the meeting to take place tomorrow afternoon, which is Saturday. But this is addressed to you. Will the media come to cover what the Security Council will do tomorrow? If it is going to be happening on Saturday, I urge you and all of your colleagues and those who are watching us to come and cover whatever the Security Council will undertake. Our objective is to stop Israel from taking this extremely dangerous escalation, and I hope that we collectively would succeed in avoiding such a crazy, irresponsible, dangerous, vicious plans that the Israeli political leadership led by Prime Minister Netanyahu is contemplating to do at any moment. Let me also add, as we speak, the Ministerial Arab Islamic Committee led by Saudi Arabia, composed of 8 countries, 5 Arabs, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, Qatar, and Palestine, and 3 Muslim countries in addition to the Arab countries. It's Turkey, Nigeria, and Indonesia are studying a draft statement. It's being put under silent proceeding, which will finish soon. And then once it is adopted, it will be circulated to all of you, including to all members of the Security Council and the international community. We are grateful for the positions declared by a number of countries, including the European Union, UK, the position of Germany, which indicated that they will not send weapons that could be used to Israel that could be used against the Gaza Strip. These positions of countries which they are accelerating, whether they are Arab countries making these statements, Muslim countries, European countries, and we hope that will affect those who have tremendous amount of influence over Israel to deter them from embarking in this crazy stuff. You heard my statement in the Security Council in the presence of everyone, including the Foreign Minister of Israel. What we need is peace. What we need is to stop the fighting. What we need is to feed the hungry people, not to kill them, the Palestinians in Gaza. What we need is peace. What we need is the end of occupation and the independence of the State of Palestine, and to make the global consensus on the two-state solution a reality. So we are at this critical moment. We have an alternative option. It is not our destiny that the option is the continuation of killing and agony and tragedies and wars. The other option is peace, of stopping everything by Israel against the Palestinian people, particularly in the Gaza Strip, and of course in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, It's the option of peace that the international community is calling for. We just finished a remarkable international conference on the two-state solution. The extremist Israeli government led by Netanyahu, against the wishes of all, including the majority of the people in Israel, and hundreds of retired generals in the different segments of the Israeli armed forces and intelligence, and against the families of the hostages and prisoners, Palestinian prisoners. He is not listening to all of that for selfish, narrow political position as articulated by the opposition in the Israeli government itself. We need all of us collectively to prevail, to stop this insanity, and to allow peace to be the option, not war and the continuation of the suffering. This is what I want to share with you. We will also keep informing you as we move forward. If you want to cover the opening of the Arab ambassadorial meeting this afternoon, you're welcome to do so. I know some might need some information in Arabic. If you want, I can say it. So for those who use English as their covering tool, be patient so that I can share with our colleagues for the Arab audience. لقد انتهيت من اجتماع مع رئيس مجلس الأمن بناء على تعليمات وتوجيهات من القيادة الفلسطينية من السيد الرئيس محمود عباس الذي
Well, the Palestinian ambassador to the UN, Riyad Mansour, just addressing some of those comments in Arabic, but let me take you through what he said. He talked about the additional catastrophe that is this new Israeli plan. He said since the war started, over 200,000 people have been killed or injured. He said we don't need more killing. We need to open the door to peace. He then talked about a request for a meeting of the full Security Council. It is really unclear quite when that will happen, but he was talking about potentially it could happen tomorrow. He said, though, there needs to be, as soon as possible, an attempt to stop Israel unleashing this new military action, which he described as extremely dangerous, as an escalation. He said, what we need is peace. What we need to do is to stop the attack. And what we need is to stop the hunger, and described that now we are, he said, at a critical moment. So those some of the key planks from Riyad Mansour. We'll keep an eye on that. That is going on live at the United Nations. But let us briefly pull away, because waiting to talk to me is Mahmoud Rostam, a third-year student in Gaza, who became a citizen journalist when the war began. He's now in Al-Mawasi in the south of the Gaza Strip, but last week he was in Gaza City. And thank you so much for being with us. What are people saying to you now they've heard some of the details of this new Israeli plan?
Well, hello, thank you for hosting me today. First of all, I want to say that this step of Israel may lead to a lot of blood, especially after, lots or most of people are currently at Al-Mawasi. Also, I want to clear that point. Israel announced that they need to take control of Gaza, which is different than occupying Gaza, because when you take control of Gaza, you are not supposed to afford health providers. Also, you are not supposed to feed the people, etc. But when you occupy Gaza, you need to take care of everything: health, education, food, everything. So this point, or this stage that we reach now, is very dangerous. It's an alert for the world, and it should not start. This morning we heard lots of bombing. Also, I think this is a start of this operation. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you about people in Gaza City, because you were there only a few days ago, and I know this announcement has been in a sense anticipated for a number of days, so people will know roughly what was happening. Will people move from Gaza City again, as the Israelis clearly want? Do you think the majority of that population will actually move?
Actually, yes. The people there at the north knows that there's no kidding with the Israeli army, because they know that this is a bloody army. They are actually, some of the families started to evacuate today, and they need to have a place in Al-Mawasi, because Al-Mawasi is fully crowded, and lots of them are ready to do that, and they are fully afraid of that step, because now Al-Mawasi is fully crowded. You can't even find a place to sleep. The people's tents are beside the beach, and sometimes the water come inside their tents. So yes, the people will leave if that happens, and I think this step means that Israel ignores all the world. The people here are not Hamas. There's a difference between Hamas. Israel treats the people here are like they are all Hamas, which is totally wrong. And I think this shouldn't start, because we will have a new massacres very soon.
Let me ask you, because you're there in Al-Mawasi, if we have large numbers of people from Gaza City, tell me what is available there in terms of food, in terms of all of the absolutely basics of life.
Well, yesterday morning it was a happy morning for the Palestinians here at Al-Mawasi, because some of the humanitarian aid trucks entered Gaza. For example, sugar. We found the 1 kilogram of sugar is sold by 50 shekels. A couple of weeks ago, it was 700 shekels. I also found some feta cheese, some extra meat, and some dates. That's only for things that we found at the market, nothing more. Also, we have some sweets, chocolates, but the people can't afford it. It's a very high price, and it's not necessary for the civilian here. The civilians are trying to have their basics of flour, etc. So the 1 kilogram of flour went from 30 shekels into 10 shekels, which is good, but it's still not affordable. I think the amounts of humanitarian aids should be more, should be higher, because dozens of humanitarian aid trucks entering Gaza, but at least we need hundreds, at least 500, and for more than a month, at least a month to have it daily.
Mahmoud, we have to leave it there, but we are grateful for your time, and perhaps we will talk again in the coming critical days. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Around the world and across the UK, you are watching BBC News. Welcome back to Verified Live. Let's stay with the very latest situation in the Middle East. That new plan after the Security Cabinet meeting. It was a long Security Cabinet meeting with the Chief of Staff for the IDF raising a number of major objections, but in the end, the plan has been pushed through by Benjamin Netanyahu. Let's speak to Yotam Vilk, who's a former Israel Defense Forces combat officer who served in Gaza. He stopped serving for the IDF in October 2024. And Yotam, thank you so much for being here with us. As I said there in the introduction, you have served during this war. Why did you refuse to go back?
At some point during our service, that we stood up on the 7th of October under a horrible massacre that was taking place in southern Israel by Hamas. We were willing to fight back. We do, I'm part of a larger group of Israeli IDF soldiers, currently joined by our high chief, at least in the critical side, but. At some point, we understood that what we are told by the Israeli government about the goal of this war, which were told us to also to replay Hamas as a military force in Gaza, and to return security to the people living in southern Israel, and to return the Israeli hostages, are not actually taking place. We had more and more knowledge about the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu himself is sabotaging the ability to get a deal. And his partners in the Israeli government are pushing through a form of occupation for resettling in Gaza. And on that understanding, I felt there is no justification anymore to not to speak out, at least.
And that is what you did. Can I ask you a broader question? Do you get the sense from conversations you have that the numbers are growing in terms of an unease about serving, about going back, reservists who have served already multiple times? Because that is one of the concerns, apparently, of the Chief of Staff of the IDF.
Definitely. You could see the amount of people actually going back is smaller than it was, and it's still becoming smaller. We are a group of at least we're now near 400 Israeli soldiers who are willing to speak out publicly, which we all know how difficult that is during this state of war, during this complicated state of war, to publicly speak out and be critical towards the actions pushed through by the Israeli government and its policy in Gaza. I have a lot of friends feeling this unease towards continue and serving when we the policy of this and the aim of this war is in the good. If I'm generous, it's vague. It's very clear that the Israeli government does not have a plan forward, which is not what the right-wing Messiah populist wants, which is, they speak about it very publicly, ethnic cleanse Gaza and resettle in it, which that was very much promised to us, not the goal of this war. It's promised to us.
Let me ask you a twin final question then. In terms of what we've heard overnight, the escalation of the war, I take it from your answer you think that is a mistake. And tell me a little more about where you think Israeli public opinion is. You spoke out. Give me an idea of elements of support you might have had, the hostility you perhaps experienced.
You experienced both. I would say, I think I proved myself. Like, I was willing, I think I'm not a pacifist. I was willing to take measures needed in my understanding of Israel using sort of a rational amount of military force to get some sort of policy through to save Israel interest. I do think the majority of the people in Israel understand that we cannot trust anymore the Israeli government. We couldn't trust them on the 7th of October, and we cannot trust them now. I think a lot of people in Israel, and you could see it by the polls, a lot of people in Israel do not trust the Israeli government, are opposed to the continuation of the war, want a full deal with the end of the war, even under these not so good circumstances that the Israeli government has a lot of blame to put how we got into this position. But you could see in every poll in Israel for the last at least 10 months, most of the
Yutam, we are out of time, and sorry to cut across you, but we have to take a short break. But we are very grateful to have you on the programme, giving us that particular perspective. So thanks for your time. Thanks for speaking to us here on BBC News. I'm back with more here in just a moment or two.